All right, well, welcome to the Peak's Life. And this is one of the info series. So today I'm going to pick your brains on something a little bit more technical. It's a term I hear you saying when you're mumbling, wandering around the keto world, saying things like, I'm autophagizing.
I think autophagizing is your made-up word.
And I try and look for what I need to clean up, because when you've autophagized, I think there should be something like a clean-up needed. But no, autophagizing is a keto term. So I may have got the term wrong, but I do know there is a term called autophagy.
There is.
It's a very great state to be in. It's the golden state of ketosis. Everyone strives to get into autophagy. So you're going to tell us all about what is autophagy, how do we get into it, how do we prevent not getting into it, so what are the steps we need to take, and what's the benefits to being in autophagy.
Oh,
You ready?
all of that.
So first of all, what does
30 seconds, go.
It's a fancy word. Autophagy means what?
Yeah, so autophagy literally means, well, auto means self,
Right.
and phagy means eating. So
it's cannibalism.
it literally means, so no, cannibalism would be when I eat you.
Oh, of course, yes, not eating yourself.
Yes,
Okay, got it.
so it's not cannibalism, because I'm not going to eat you.
Okay.
It's self-eating. So autophagy literally means self-eating.
Good, and that helps us because...
Yeah, well, when you eat yourself, you get rid of the fat. No, I'm kidding. So this is a process that goes on at cellular level, right? So when we think about self-eating, here we're actually talking about cells. So we all know that our bodies are made up of lots and lots of cells of different types. You know, we've got the cells of the heart, the lungs, the liver. We've got the cells throughout the body that make up all sorts of different membranes and tendons and muscles and everything. So when we actually slice through our body, we just find a lot of cells. If we were to magnify that slice incredibly, then we'd see all those little cells. Okay. So when we get down to that level, what we're talking about is one of the processes that goes on that allows our body to basically recycle and renew the old and damaged cells.
Great.
So just very quickly, when we go into the body and we look at the cells themselves, there is a process called apoptosis, and apoptosis is cell death. Okay. And it's a bit macabre, but it's a pre-programmed cell death. So basically, when cells all subdivide. So take a cell, it will subdivide and form two, and those two will subdivide and form four, and so on and so forth. Now, after a number of times that a cell has divided itself, it is programmed to die. And the reason for that is by that time they're getting pretty old. So it's like running your car for years and years, and you've done a bit of work on the car and it's performed great function, but it just gets so old that eventually you've got to send it to the scrapyard.
Okay.
That's apoptosis.
Right.
Cells die. But sometimes the cells don't need to be replaced completely. They've just got bits that are not good.
You've got to clean out.
So they need a bit of a clean out. So
Right.
you can think about this a bit like vacuuming the house or having a spring clean. When you get to a point of autophagy, the cells then will basically recycle and have a clear out of those old and damaged cells, the proteins that basically will just make room for new healthy cells to be regenerated.
So it's not something I'm going to know that is happening. I'm just going to feel the benefits if my cells have cleaned out and rejuvenated and regrown and refreshed.
Yeah, and you're not even going to feel the benefits per se, because you're not going to say, right, today I'm in autophagy and tomorrow I feel amazing.
But that's
it
what
doesn't
you do.
work like
You
that.
prance around going, I'm autophagizing.
Don't say I'm autophagizing.
As if it's
a
some
made-up word.
As if it's some golden state. So you're saying that even though you're telling me you're autophagizing, you don't actually feel it. You just know that your body's in autophagy and there's good stuff going on inside.
There's good stuff going on. So
right.
It's kind of like the holy grail of ketosis.
Good.
So when we talk about ketosis, so if we do keto, if we eat ketogenic foods and we do ketogenic fasting, then the aim is to get us into ketosis.
Yes.
And ketosis is a state where the body is producing ketones in the liver. And those ketones are produced either from our own fat, or from fat we consume, so essentially, I don't want to get too much into the fuel sources, because I always talk on about the fuel sources, but essentially in ketosis, we're producing that lovely clean fuel for the body. So we've forced ourselves into that state, we've removed the carbohydrates. if we keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into ketosis, then eventually we're going to reach a state called autophagy.
Right.
And it's at that point when we start to get this cellular renewal and this clean out of all the shit at a cellular level.
All right, so before we talk about how we get there, when we get there to the world of autophagy, what are the benefits our body is going to get from being in a state of autophagy?
Well, so first of all, we're going to clear out the old.
Good. So it's the
old
cleaning.
cells. I mean,
Yep.
That cellular clean out is something that if you are constantly eating and you're eating carbohydrate-rich food and you're not in ketosis,
Yep.
you're not going to get. So let's face it, we all want to have a good clean out.
Good.
Think about your house. Most people will every now and then do a clean out.
Yes.
So it feels good to do the spring clean of the house. It feels good to do the spring clean of the body.
Absolutely. Yep.
So it's really good to do that. It's got amazing longevity benefits.
Woohoo! We love longevity.
So if you're interested in living a long and healthy life,
And who isn't?
exactly, then this is one of the best ways to basically extend your lifespan, and not only to extend it, to be healthier for longer.
Okay.
So, this applies to any age group. It's not for all people. It's not for all people looking to get a couple of years. When you're in your teens and your 20s and your 30s, start doing it already, because you're going to be stacking the years up.
Okay.
Yeah?
Put them in the bank.
Put them in the bank. So, the younger you are, the better, because you've got years ahead of you already, and
Excellent.
you can keep on pushing that lifespan further and further out.
So it regenerates, cleans out cells, and will make us live longer and longer and longer.
It will indeed. It's also really effective for cleaning out some of those cells that are responsible for diseases.
Oh, excellent.
So what we know is that, and again, without getting super technical, in the brain, there are a lot of those damaged cells, particularly those certain types of proteins that are responsible for diseases like Alzheimer's, so the neurological diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. And, we've known a bit about them for a long time, but we haven't really known what to do. But what we do see is when we get to the point of autophagy, the body is able to actually clean out some of those problems, some of those damaged cells, and actually prevent conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So, that's pretty significant.
Absolutely, some quite serious, not just the anti-aging, but it's quite serious disease preventative, or some ways that we can potentially minimise the risk of our bodies being subjected to those diseases.
That's right,
Definitely worthwhile.
So I'm very interested in autophagy because I have, on my mother's side of my family, we have quite a long history of neurological disease, so senile dementia. So
Yes.
grandma and great grandma.
No jokes.
It's probably already here, right? Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It arrived a while ago, just so you know.
That's it. So what was your name again?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So,
I rest my case.
We do. So we have this long history of those sort of neurological conditions. And so I look at it and say, well, what can I do to help my brain? Well, I can push myself into autophagy on a regular basis and clean out any of those, damaged cells, and give myself the best chance of avoiding those diseases.
Okay. So it's the golden state of ketosis.
It is,
Keto.
sorry, there's another, there's a whole raft of different conditions that it can help, but the other one that's got to be mentioned is cancer.
Okay.
Because what we know is that cancer cells feed off glucose.
Right.
And so ketosis, being in a state of ketosis, can already help either prevent or potentially treat cancer. And this goes with a bunch of caveats, because a lot of the information we've got in cancer is basically animal studies. So how much do they relate to people? We're not sure. So I've got to put a little bit of a caveat on that one. But what we do know is that it may benefit people who are facing diseases like cancer, whether it's a genetic condition or whether they've got cancer at the time. Because going into ketosis is already going to starve the cancer cells.
Of course.
Going into autophagy, where you're going very, very deep into therapeutic levels of ketosis, is absolutely going to starve them for longer periods of time. So getting into a state of autophagy, if you're dealing with cancer, or if you're potentially thinking that you may get cancer because of genetic condition, these could be really good tools in your armoury.
Absolutely. All right, so it sounds like it is the holy grail of ketosis. We are aiming to, if we want to get to autophagy, we want to keep getting deeper and deeper to ketosis. and we want to find the best way to get there, and also look at what are the ways that could impede us getting into autophagy. So run us through, how do I get to autophagy, not just ketosis, how do I get to that depth? And then maybe some things that would prevent me achieving autophagy.
So when we talk about getting into that state of autophagy, we've basically got to have driven glucose down,
right,
and driven ketones up.
So get that balance the other way.
So that's right. So it's making sure that we've got rid of as much glucose from the system as we possibly can, and we've got a good level of ketones in the blood, so that the ratio between the two swings to the point where effectively autophagy kicks in.
Right.
So for your average carb burner, it's never going to happen.
Okay.
Right?
Forget it.
If you're basically eating carbohydrates, you're going to have a real hard time with this.
Your glucose level will always be much, much higher, and the ketone level will be much, much lower.
Because
you're never going to get the balance.
Yeah, you're feeding your body continuously with glucose.
Cool. All right.
So if you're on a keto diet, eating keto foods and doing keto fasting, then you've already taken the first step.
Right.
Because there you will have already reduced your glucose and increased your ketones.
Yep, so you're getting there.
You're getting there. And depending on exactly what you eat and depending on your own body and whether you're fat adapted, some people can achieve autophagy simply from, their eating.
Okay, interesting.
Not very many.
Right.
So most people will probably still have enough carbohydrates and enough protein in the diet that they're probably not going to get into autophagy. But for example, if I'm eating keto, so I'll take a personal example myself. If I'm eating very clean keto, strict, and I'm having my last meal of the day maybe around 7 o'clock in the evening, I've had lots of healthy fats during the day, I've had limited protein. By the time I've gone to bed and got up the next morning, I might be teetering on the edge of autophagy.
Okay.
If I then continue my fast through to perhaps 10, 11 o'clock, there's quite a lot of days where I will have actually got into autophagy. So I'll have hit that point.
Glucose has dropped, ketones are coming up, and you start prancing around and say you're autophagizing.
Autophagizing, that's the one.
It's the new word.
So,
all right.
The first thing is getting into ketosis and then pushing far enough into ketosis that the levels change.
Yes.
Now that can be helped by intermittent fasting.
Of course, yes.
So if I extend my overnight fast, as I just said, a few hours, and I push it through to 12 o'clock, I'll almost certainly be into autophagy.
Understand.
So for those people who are going from a level of ketosis already, like myself, because I have been on the keto diet for many years, it's going to be fairly easy for me to get to that point. It might be 6 to 12 hours, and I'll already hit autophagy. If I'm coming from a different start point, so if I'm starting a bit further behind and I've been eating carbohydrates, it could take anywhere up to 48 hours of fasting to get to autophagy.
And that's essentially getting the glucose down to a reasonable level and allowing the ketones to come up. So it's just going to take time to flush that out of your body.
It's just going to take time for your body to burn through that glucose. Good. Once all the glucose is gone, then you can enter ketosis, and then at some point you'll get to autophagy. So like I said, 36 to 48 hours if you're a carb eater, 6 to 12 hours if you're already on keto and you're in ketosis.
Okay.
The next thing that can push you over the edge and into autophagy is actually high intensity interval training, so HIIT training, intense exercise.
Okay.
And that's because that depletes the glucose, because your muscles are using the glucose for energy, so you're burning through the glucose stores faster.
Right. Okay.
So again, if you're that carb eater, you've had some carbs, you've got some glucose in your system, doing some very high intensity exercise will drop that glucose down as it gets burnt off. And the other thing not to forget is that when you're trying to achieve autophagy, you need to make sure you're getting plenty of sleep.
Right.
Because if you're not well hydrated, you're not sleeping well, it's much more difficult for the body because you're putting stress on the body. So to get into autophagy effectively, you actually want to be as de-stressed and as relaxed as you can, and that means not putting hormetic stressors too much onto the body.
All makes sense. So if we follow that advice, we can fast track our way to autophagy. What are some of the barriers that would prevent us getting there?
So the things that are going to stop you are eating.
Oh, that old thing.
That old thing.
So breaking the fast and eating. Yes.
Breaking the fast. So if I get up in the morning and I eat, so in particular what I'm talking about here is carbohydrates.
Yes, of course.
And if you think about why that is, carbohydrates are going to increase your glucose.
It's going to stop the process.
Does that make sense?
It absolutely does.
Yeah. So if you consume carbohydrates, glucose goes up and it stops the process. The second one that stops the process is protein.
Right.
It's a different mechanism. It's through the mTOR pathway, so it's a different signalling pathway in the body. When the body gets protein into it, more than say 15 grams or half an ounce, the body is going to go, signal, I've got protein, stop the autophagy. So eating protein will also stop it.
Okay,
so those are probably the two biggest ways that you can stop autophagy. The next one will be simply over-consuming calories. So you can have fats. You can have fats and still get into autophagy. So I can have my bulletproof coffee
It won't impact it.
because it's only got butter and MCT oil with a bit of coffee, and it won't impact the process because it's pure fats. Fats don't raise your glucose level, they don't trigger an insulin response. So it means that my body is not telling itself stop, stop, stop.
Yes.
It's going to take the fats in, and that's just going to help me power through. However, if I consume so much butter coffee that I'm consuming massive calories,
yes,
then there's a good chance you're going to stop it because you're probably not going to maintain that state of ketosis.
All right, so we want to get there because of all the benefits. You've given us some tips on how to get there and or what could prevent it. When we get into autophagy, and there's various ways to measure, how do we measure? What are the numbers? What's the detail around making sure we are in autophagy and we can stay there for as long as possible?
So the best way to do this is to measure your blood glucose and your blood ketones.
Okay.
Right, so we've talked about this, I think, in a couple of episodes. Basically, get yourself a ketone meter. Now, you can do this with the sticks that you pee on, right? So you can get keto sticks. They're not as reliable because what you do, let me talk about the keto sticks first. You simply go to the chemist or pharmacist and you get yourself a little jar of keto sticks. And they've got colours on them, and you essentially pee on the stick, and the bottom of the stick has got a little chemical on it, and when you pee on that, it's a bit like a pregnancy test. It'll change colour.
Right.
So the colour that you get from your keto stick will tell you how much or how deep you are into ketosis.
Right.
So if the stick goes a bright purple colour, then you're deep, deep, deep in ketosis. If it's a light pink, you might not have even gone into ketosis. And you can do the same with glucose.
Okay.
You get two types of sticks, the ketone ones and the glucose. The difficulty is you've got to look at your stick, the end of your stick, and you've got to compare it with a chart on the bottle and read off the numbers.
And difficulty is holding two sticks when you pee.
Yeah.
I find. You have to go back and forth, side to side, up and down.
We don't want to know about your habits in the bathroom, Mike. So moving swiftly on, going to the safer subject of blood ketone meters.
And more accurate.
Much more
than me
accurate.
peeing on two sticks.
Much better than you thinking about you trying to pee on sticks. So get yourself a ketone meter, they're nice and cheap.
Yes.
The sticks are probably about $1 each, so they're a little bit expensive. And all you do is you simply prick the end of your finger, and then you take one of the, again, the sticks involved, you take one of the little reeds, the little analysis sticks, put it into the meter, dab it onto the blood that you've just got out of the pinprick, and then the meter will analyse that blood and it will tell you your glucose level, if it's a glucose stick, or your ketone level, if it's a ketone stick.
All right, so go with the bloods one, or go with both, but maybe the bloods is obviously a little bit more accurate. What sort of numbers are we looking for and what do they mean?
So what we're going to do, because we're interested in the ratio, the balance between glucose and ketones, we're going to do a little bit of maths.
Okay.
So we're basically going to take our glucose reading and we're going to divide it by our ketone reading.
Right.
So glucose reading divided by ketones will give us a number.
And that number will indicate whether we're in or out of autophagy.
That's right.
Excellent.
Does that make sense?
It does. It's a very simple maths, but let's get some couple of examples so that we can put some real value to it.
So just a couple of words of warning first. If you're in the US, it's likely that your glucose meter will be in milligrams per deciliter, mgs per dl.
Right.
What you need to do, because your ketone meter will probably be in millimoles per litre, m-mole per litre per L. So you need to get them in the same units, otherwise you're going to get a very confusing reading.
Okay, which doesn't make sense.
So first of all, if your meter is if you're in the US, most of the countries don't need to worry about this. If you're in the US and your meter's in milligrams per deciliter, then you basically divide that number by 18. That will get you into the other units. Then you can take that reading and divide it by the ketone number. So typically, if you're working in millimoles per litre, you'd expect glucose readings in the range of perhaps 3 to 5 for a healthy person in ketosis.
Okay, so it's healthy in ketosis, 3 to 5. If it was a carb person, would I be significantly higher?
You might be a bit higher if you're taking these readings after a meal, and I would advise doing them 2 to 3 hours after a meal.
Good.
Because then your body's responding to the meal.
Understand.
Obviously, you might be fasting, so if
Yes.
you're doing this while you're fasting, you won't be doing it after a meal. And then if you're not that healthy, so if you're suffering type 2 diabetes, your levels could be 6, 7, or even higher,
Wow, okay.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So depending on how bad your diabetes is, those numbers could be quite significant.
Okay.
For the ketones, if you're a healthy person in ketosis, you might expect readings between about 1 and 3 millimoles per litre.
Yes.
If you're already deep in ketosis, you might see 3 to 6. Not to be confused with the very high readings that some diabetics get, so we won't confuse things with that. So those would be your individual glucose and ketone readings.
So if I got a glucose reading of, say, 5.
Well, let's take an example.
Okay.
Let me give you. So let's take an example which was actually mine this morning.
All right.
All right. So my number
Did you
this
do the
morning.
dance this morning? Did the little...
I did the little dance.
Little autophagy dance?
I'm in autophagy. So I've been fasting overnight, and I fasted through the morning.
Right.
I then measured my glucose and my ketones. My glucose was at 3.
Okay.
So it's very low. That indicates my glucose levels are very low, which you'd expect. I didn't have any carbs yesterday, apart from a few in my nuts, and pretty much very high fat day, moderate protein day. So I'd expect quite low glucose after I've fasted. So glucose at 3.
Yes.
Because I'd fasted from about 7 o'clock last night through to about 11 o'clock this morning, my ketones had already risen very high, and they were already at 6.
Okay.
So glucose is at 3, ketones are at 6. I divide 3 by 6, what do I get?
Half.
I get a half. So my number, my glucose ketone index, my GKI, was 0.5. Now 0.5 is less than 1, and any number less than 1 is a very deep level of ketosis into autophagy. It's therapeutic ketosis.
Right.
So when we've gone down below 1, so any of those numbers, any of those fractions below 1 shows us that we've got a reasonable chance that we've hit autophagy. It's not exact, because we'd need to measure insulin, but it's a really good indicator. So it's not an exact science, but a good indicator. So a very good chance I was well into autophagy, and based on what I know about my body, probably had been for about 6 hours.
So in simple terms, forgetting the division, when my ketone reading is the same as or above my glucose reading, I'm in autophagy.
That's right. So you want to be looking at two things. You want to be looking at what's the glucose reading itself.
Okay. By itself?
By
Yep.
itself. Because levels above 5 are not that great.
So we're looking for 3 to 5 as a healthy...
Really want that down below 5. Like not even 3, but down below 5 is fine.
Okay.
And then we want that ratio to be 1 or less. So
Okay.
glucose and ketones equal,
Yes.
or ketones above glucose, and we should be either approaching or into
It's a
autophagy.
holy grail of ketosis.
That's it.
Excellent.
Now, if I look at just that GKI, that glucose ketone index in general, so forget about the autophagy part, just a couple of other things. You might be wondering, well, I'm not fussed about autophagy, but what does it mean? It's a more accurate way to predict ketosis than just taking your ketone reading. So if you're monitoring your ketones and you want to know where you're at, especially when you're transitioning, it's really good to have a look at that level. So we've said already levels less than 1, deep ketosis, therapeutic levels, and into autophagy.
Yes.
If you're at the level perhaps of maybe, let's say 3 to 6, then levels of 3 to 6 are where you'd want to be if you were perhaps treating diabetes or obesity.
Understand.
If you've got 6 to 9, that's a reasonable level to be in for weight loss and general health.
Right.
Above 9, you're probably not in ketosis. So don't think that more is better. Right? Don't think that every day you need a GKI of less than 1. That's not what I'm saying. Everybody thinks I've got to go after that holy grail and I need it every single day. You don't. If you're in the range, 3 to 9, you are in ketosis, you're doing wonders for your body, you're improving your health. If you're at the lower end of that scale, 3 or even less, then if you're overweight, if you're obese, you're going to lose weight faster.
Absolutely.
If you're type 2 diabetic, you're going to again be helping your insulin levels and reversing that diabetes. And if you do want autophagy, you know, because you've been able to maintain that state of ketosis for a while, then, and you want a bit more, and who wouldn't want that autophagy and those benefits, then push it below 1 every now and then, you know, maybe once a month, once a week, to get that cellular cleanup. Once a week, once a month, more than enough. Your body's going to love you for it. You're going to push that lifespan out, get a longer life, get the longevity benefits, and feel amazing.
Excellent. Now I actually understand when you do the autophagizing dance, why you're doing it, the benefits of you doing it, and it's obviously a good place to be.
And why you should do it yourself.
Trying to do the dance as we speak.